Peace, peace, peace. It's Rakim with another episode of Wise the Dome. And today I just wanted to build on some of the things that I saw on this news cycle for this week. And one was Joe Biden's response to the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. And in his response, he said, the jury process in America works and we have to abide by it. Paraphrasing, but something to the effect of the jury process in America working. So this bill really isn't about anything that has to do with Kyle Rittenhouse. Whenever he said that, as far as the jury system in America working, it made me research a few things, and because we know this is not true. And we know how the jury system and the selection process in this America is inherently racist, and it is strategic. And I'm going to show and prove how it is strategic here in a minute. But you have what are called peremptory challenges, which allow a lawyer to remove a juror, a prospective juror, for no apparent reason at all. Now, in 1986, there was a case, Batson versus Kentucky, the Supreme Court, which made it illegal to remove jurors on the basis of race. But like all things when it comes to institutional racism, you have to be able to prove intent. And unless someone says, hey, I'm removing this juror because he is Black, or because he is a Black man, or she is a Black woman, then you cannot prove that this is the reason that they are being removed. And so that's institutional racism in a nutshell. A lot of people have read this book here, New Jim Crow. So I'm just going to build on, I'm going to read a little bit from what Michelle Alexander said in this book when it comes to peremptory strikes and the racism in the process of being able to exclude Black men and women from being on juries. So she says, for all its bluster, the court offered no meaningful protection against jury discrimination in the years that followed. A legal scholar, Benno Schmidt, had observed from the end of Reconstruction through the New Deal, the systematic exclusion of Black men from Southern juries was about as plain as any legal discrimination could be, short of proclamation in the state statutes or confession by state officials. The Supreme Court repeatedly upheld convictions by Black defendants by all-white juries in situations where exclusion of Black jurors was obvious. The only case in which the court overturned a conviction on the grounds of discrimination in jury selection was Neal versus Delaware, a case decided in 1935. State law in Delaware once had explicitly restricted jury service to white men, and no colored citizens had ever been summoned as a juror. The Delaware Supreme Court had rejected Neal's equal protection claim on the grounds that the great body of Black men residing in this state are utterly unqualified by want of intelligence, experience, or moral integrity. The Supreme Court reversed. Clearly, what offended the U.S. Supreme Court was not the exclusion of Blacks from jury per se, but rather doing so openly and explicitly. That orientation continues to hold today. So what she's pretty much saying, using these peremptory challenges, they are able to remove Black men and women off of these juries, which is an age-old practice because at one time they would not even allow us to be on juries. And so there's a reason why, and there's a reason why lawyers strategically use peremptory challenges as a strategy when it comes to defending or prosecuting. And I'm going to get into why. So there was a research paper called Race, Gender, and Juries, Evidence from North Carolina, Francis X. Flanagan, Wake Forest University. You can look up this paper yourself if you want to read the whole thing as well. But it says in this paper uses data from felony jury trials in North Carolina to show that race and gender composition of the randomly selected jury pool has a significant effect on the possibility of conviction. Attorneys adjust peremptory challenge strategies in accordance, and state peremptory challenges have a significant positive impact on the conviction rate when the defendant is a Black male. Jury pools with higher proportions of white men are more likely to convict a Black male defendant relative to white male defendants. Jury pools with higher proportion of Black men are more likely to acquit all defendants, especially Black men. Attorneys use peremptory challenges strategically in accordance with these results. So you gotta ask yourself too, who was on, the Kyle Rittenhouse jury, right? Um, and obviously, white people are more sympathetic to other white people, especially if in a situation like this where they see he was doing something for the greater good, right? He crossed state lines to protect property. But, Joe Biden's comments about not being able, about trusting the jury process and the jury system in America works, it's clear that it doesn't, right? But I think this is just another angle that you can look at it from to show that shows his incompetence of being a quote unquote leader of the new world. But on the flip side of it, the jury system does work. It works. This is the author of the 94 crime bill. It works in the way that they want it to work, which means that we are to be excluded from jury pools more often than not due to the simple fact that we are Black. And due to this simple fact, there's more likely a chance that we will choose to acquit when things aren't adding up. And so it's a strategy used by lawyers, and I'm sure Joe Biden is well aware of this. But once again, he said it works. And like I said, um, it's just he's the author of the 94 crime bill. I mean, what more can you really expect from somebody like that? There's also there's another way that we are left off of the jury pool here in American court systems as well. And so on page 193, 194 in the new Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander also says, today's defendants face a situation highly similar to the one they faced a century ago. As described in chapter 3, a formal prohibition against race-based peremptory strikes does exist. As a practical matter, however, the court has tolerated the systemic exclusion of Blacks from juries by allowing lower courts to accept silly and even superstitious reasons for striking Black jurors. To make matters worse, a large percentage of Black men, about 30%, are automatically excluded from jury service because they have been labeled felons. The combined effect of race-based peremptory strikes and the automatic exclusion of felons from juries has put Black defendants in a familiar place, in a courtroom in shackles facing an all-white jury, right? And so another way that this institutional racism shows its face in the institutions in America, right? And so whenever he was just speaking on that, on the Kyle Rittenhouse thing and talking about the jury selection being right and exact, it's not right and exact. And that's the first thing that I thought of as soon as he said that. And so also I wanted to build on with, we are approaching Thanksgiving, and a lot of, we know the history that they give us in school about this day, but there are certain things that can put it all into context that they don't teach. And one is that this holiday began, or some people may consider it a hell day, right? Especially, with it being a day and that kind of represents the genocide of indigenous people in America. But this day this day was first celebrated in the northern states, in the New England states here in America. And the southern states saw it as like a Yankee tradition. They also saw the northern states as being obviously pro-abolition states, right? Pro-abolitionist states. And so a lot of states, including Virginia and a few others, refused to uh, make this a make this holiday a part of their tradition, because they saw that as being an anti-slavery holiday. And that's kind of wild because whenever you think about white pathology, right, and white supremacy, they see a day that is celebrating the genocide of Native Americans as a pro-Yankee day. They don't see the genocide part of it, right? At the same time, they feel that it threatens their way of life, which is um, being a slave owner or dealing in the slave trade. And so, with that said, you have to ask yourself, what were we doing around that time as well? So, there are a lot of, from just the research that I have done over the years, um, during slavery, you had men would go out and hunt wild game and bring it back for the family to cook if they were able to do that, right? In some cases they weren't. Some cases they were they had to work through it just like any other day. Um, Also, there was church was big, right? Um, Church sermons in the north and possibly more than likely in the south as well, but it was a different type of atmosphere. But church was big on Thanksgiving Day to the enslaved African. That's where they would go hear sermons that would speak either about freedom or about later on some of those sermons and speeches became more about assimilation. Um, and there was one by a brother in the AME church. His name Benjamin Arnett, and he delivered a famous sermon about calling all American citizens to love their country, which was shortly after the Emancipation Proclamation. You also had one thing that they don't talk about though is this was the day that many enslaved Africans chose to run and escape. Right? Let me say it again. This was the day that many enslaved Africans chose to run and escape. You have these plantation owners and these enslavers would go away and visit family. And while they were gone, enslaved Africans would often run for freedom. That's one thing that they don't teach is the fact that a lot of these holidays, especially Thanksgiving, but a lot of these holidays where they would be away from their home, the enslaver that is, enslaved Africans would use that as an opportunity to escape. And so Thanksgiving was no different. Also on Thanksgiving Day, Booker T. Washington gave a speech in the late 1890s. And it was an address on Thanksgiving Day about racism within the country. And I'll read just a little bit of it. And he said, when you have gotten the full story of the heroic conduct of the Negro in the Spanish-American War, heard it from the lips of the Northern soldier and Southern soldier, from ex-abolitionist and ex-master, then decide within yourself whether a race that is thus willing to die for its country should not be given the highest opportunity to live for its country. Now, at that time, Booker T. Washington was chosen by white America to be the spokesperson for Black people. And so a lot of his sentiments were pro assimilation. I mean, there were obviously another, there are obviously those like W.E.B. Du Bois and others that oppose his view. I'm not going to get too much into that, but he was known for being able to uh, get white people to pay him for the projects that he was working on, especially things that involved Tuskegee. Now, whether he was finessing or whether he was sincere about all that, we'll probably never know. But what they wrote about that speech was at that time in 1898 in the Chicago Times Herald, it said Booker T. Washington's address at the Jubilee Thanksgiving services at the auditorium contained one of the most eloquent tributes ever paid to the loyalty and valor of the colored race. At the same time, was one of the most powerful appeals for justice to a race which has always chosen the better part. The speaker, who is the recognized leader of the colored race, like I told you, like Europeans chose him to be the recognized leader of Black people. But let's go. Reviewed the history of his people from the childhood of the nation to the present day. He pictured the Negro choosing slavery rather than extinction, recalled Crispus Attucks shedding his blood at the beginning of the American Revolution, that white Americans might be free, while Black Americans remained in slavery, rehearsed the conduct of the Negroes with Jackson at New Orleans, drew a vivid and pathetic picture of the Southern slaves protecting and supporting the families of their master, while the latter were fighting to perpetuate Black slavery, recounted the bravery of colored troops at Port Hudson and Fort Wagner and Pillow, and praised the heroism of the Black regiments that stormed El Caney in Santiago to give freedom to the enslaved people of Cuba, forgetting for the time being the unjust discrimination that law and custom make against them in their own country. And all these things the speaker declared that his race had chosen the better part. And then he made an eloquent appeal to the conscience of white Americans. See, sounds like he went in, right? Like he was going in, but the reason why he was accepted, the reason why white Americans love these type of speeches is because he began to appeal to their conscience. But what we know now is you can't appeal to the morality of those that don't have any morals, that those that don't have a moral compass, those that don't see you as being human or being the same on the same level as they are. And so that's where I think, he went wrong. And so I'll read a little bit more of what he said in that speech. He also said, when Americans conquer race prejudice, they will have won a victory greater than can be obtained through the achievements of arms. He likened the effect of race discrimination, especially in southern states, to cancer gnawing at the heart of the republic. This was in 1898. Appealed to the conscious, or attempted to the conscious of some of those that didn't have a conscience, especially when it came to our freedom, justice, and equality of Black people. And you don't mean to go too much off on a tangent, but that's part of the history of Thanksgiving in this country, as far as Black people are concerned, was obviously this speech from Booker T. Washington. But if you don't take anything from um, that build, as far as when it comes to the so-called holiday of Thanksgiving, is take the tidbit that we use this time to escape. But however you can draw that up for your own self, however you can draw that up and apply it to how you live in and what you got going on. Just take that jewel with you, because I think that's powerful. While they was partying, we was getting the hell out of there. You know what I'm saying? But they like to curate this narrative that it was all happy go lucky and just happy to, you know, uh, they make the enslaved African seem to be a buffoon that has no self awareness, no consciousness of what's going on. But as we can see, um, They like to paint this whole, they use Thanksgiving to paint an idea of being American, being a part of society and assimilating within American culture. Running away, American culture at that time was slavery, right? American culture to this day could be considered still slavery with the prison industrial complex. But even then, they 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 still painted a oneness of America through their holidays. But we were escaping during the holidays. Possibly in some cases, that escape might had we might have been violent towards them while attempting our escapes. All rebellions weren't really written about extensively. Booker T. Washington, almost 30 something years after the emancipation, I believe his heart was in the right place and he was striving to get us to a better point in this country. But he thought that he could change white people. But we're here in 2021, and we see that that's not how that works. So the last thing I wanted to kind of touch on was the movie King Richard. And so there's a writer for Slate magazine, Allegra Frank, who accused it of being sexist. And if you Google King Richard movie, sexism, a lot of articles going to come up. Also, Dr. Jessica Taylor criticized it of being sexist, who is a feminist author of several books, and she is Caucasian. And so the thing that they didn't bother to well, first I will kind of paint the picture. What they attempted to do was frame it as if they care about the story of Black women being told. They said the Williams sisters, paraphrasing, are some of the greatest athletes to ever walk the planet. I want to know their story, right? They frame it as if they are on the side of Black women. But us in the Black community know that ever since the Williams sisters have come on the scene, they have always highlighted their family and told the story that of their father and what he did and how he would how he got him in tennis in Compton and the obstacles that they overcame and that he helped them to overcome and the battles that he fought on their behalf, being two Black girls from Compton attempting to play a predominantly white sport. So those feminist chicks use the angle of being on the side of Black women. But if you were on the side of Black women, then you would understand that this is the story that the Williams sisters wanted to tell themselves. They are the executive producers of the show, of the movie, rather. It's just another way that they attempt to divide Black men from Black women. First off, it's not even their business. They should just watch the movie and enjoy it like everybody else and not have a comment on it. But they have this sense of entitlement to where no matter what it is, they feel like they can interject their worldview into ours. And their worldview never sees Black men in its proper light. Doesn't see Black women in its proper light either. But what they do is they lie, they fake, as if they're on the side of Black women. But there's a book called They Were Her Property. And it shows in this book that white women who were slave owners were more vicious at times than the men, right? Which is not surprising. If you've ever worked for a white woman, you already know how that could be. You know what I'm saying? Um, and so it just makes me think if those type of feminist authors who are upset at the fact that a movie is being made highlighting a strong black man who helped to raise his daughter, well, who raised his daughters the best way he could, and they turned out to be some of the best athletes in the world. If you're upset about that, to me, that means that you would be the same type of woman to be like you'd be one of them slave owning women in the South, just like they speak about in their book. You know, it's 2021, so they masked how they really feel their dirty religions with with talking points that they feel like won't get them in trouble. And in this case, they tried to mask it by talking about how great the Williams sisters are, right? We all understand their greatness. We all know they are great, right? But why is it hard to fathom that if they're great, right, then they had a great father that helped them to be great. They had a great mother to help them be great, right? And in a lot of cases, they might not even said nothing if the movie was highlighting the mother, right? But due to the fact that it's highlighting a black man, there's a problem. And if you go on YouTube and there are certain clips of their father going in on European journalists who were attempting to bully his daughters. Like this was the type of father that they had, one that was there to protect and shield them from the nonsense that they're trying to spew now. You know what I'm saying? Like this is a lot of the slick tricks that the devil likes to use in order to cause confusion within our community. Now, for the most part, most black women are not going for that. They're not trying to hear that. Definitely no brothers is trying to hear that. But at the same time, there's always some that's going to be easily led in the wrong direction and fall for those type of tricks that the devil does use. You know, they don't know how to mind their business. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to see black women have any type of autonomy over themselves, right? How are you going to tell them tell them about the story that they want to tell about themselves? As long as that you want them to tell the stories that you want them to tell. And why are y'all so scared of strong black men being highlighted in this society? I mean, we know why, but you got to ask yourself, it's it's not it's not a game and it's not done by accident. As soon as the movie came out, at least 3 or 4 articles came out back to back to back to back, questioning the motive, calling it fiction, and uh, framing the movie as being sexist. It's not a coincidence. This is why it's always important for us to tell our own stories. And we shouldn't care whether it offends others. As long as we tell the truth in what we're doing, whether you're offended or not, or even if you don't understand it. Most of the time they don't understand it because they don't want to understand it. They don't want to understand black women, because if they did want to, if those white feminists wanted to understand black women, then they would understand, they would know that they are part of the problem as well. But they want to, they white women, put it like this: white women are of the oppressor class, which makes them oppressors as well. They cannot escape that. And becoming a crazed feminist, in a lot of cases, they feel like they can escape that. But in actuality, like in this case, they show their hand. This is clearly racist to act as if 2 black women can't tell the stories that they want to tell. about a Black man who was their father, who raised them. But that's all I wanted to build on. You know what I'm saying? Whether you staying home or whether you going to kick it with your family today, man, y'all be safe. Appreciate you for tuning in. Peace.